Welcome, listeners, to a brand new bonus episode of Oh My Word podcast. And today we have a really special treat. I'm really excited for this because we have, for the first time ever on this podcast, well, his name is Michael Stiles. And are you an artist, an illustrator, both? How do you describe yourself?
Oh, I like that question. I think I'm just going to go with artist because while I primarily illustrate, I do other stuff too, like sculpture, lettering, a lot of lettering. So yeah, I think I'm just an artist.
Wow. Well, anyways, Michael, welcome to the podcast, and I'm looking forward to what we're going to discover. So that's actually interesting. Now I'm going to go back to that answer that you gave. So would you say artist is kind of the catch-all phrase, and then illustrator is under the umbrella of artists, sculptors under the umbrella, and then artist just covers everything?
Yeah, I mean, I do consider myself an illustrator, for sure, definitely. Like, if I were to pick one discipline, I guess, if that's the word for it, I would say illustrator, definitely. The other stuff is just like, when I'm tired of drawing or doing something that I normally do day to day, then I'll be like, oh, what if I make something by hand? It's a different approach, different mindset too.
Right. I just think if that's the same, I guess it's kind of the same as someone saying they're a writer and then they're also an author, which means that they have a book that's published. But a writer can do like lots of things. And then that's funny. You're like, when I need a break, I just do art, but I do just other art. So
yeah, I know, right?
Yeah. So how did you get into this? Especially because everyone kind of rolls their eyes about like creative field stuff. So how you're like, you know what, I'm going to be an artist and I'm going to make that my thing. Like, how did you even get into this kind of stuff?
That's a long story, but I'll try to sum it up as quickly as possible. Basically, I drew all the time when I was a kid. I used to sit in front of the TV. I did the coloring book thing, watch cartoons all the time. I did play outside quite a bit, but I always liked to draw. And I was really into fantasy, Dungeons & Dragons, all that stuff. So I loved looking at the artwork that was in those books. Like, I was obsessed with artists like Frank Frazetta, and I don't even know the names of some of the old school, like, Dungeons & Dragons illustrators, but they're beautiful.
Right.
So that really inspired me, and all through school I drew, and I just really excelled in the field. And when I got into college, initially I was trying to find an occupation that would actually pay the bills more so. Not that art doesn't, but it's just not. So I fought that for a while, and then I decided, you know what? I really just like to do this. I think I'm good at it. Let's just do it and figure it out. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Well, so how does that affect then whatever courses you're taking? Do you still kind of make sure you get like a general BA, or then, or were you in an art school then, or did you transfer to an art school at that point? Or
yeah. So I started off, I went to the local junior college. It's like literally down the street from where I lived, and it was wonderful. I took all my GE there, and after I took the psychology course there, I thought to myself, this is just a terrible way to sum up that career, but do I really want to listen to other people complain to me all day, and how much is that going to wear on me?
Oh,
and I said, oh, yeah, I don't have the right temperament for this. So I said, you know what, this isn't for me. And then I had actually finished my GEs, and I could have transferred anywhere at that point, but I didn't really know what to do. So I took like a painting course because I always wanted to learn how to paint. I had never done any actual painting with acrylic or oil. So I took like 2 years of painting and some other courses and stuff, because at that point I kind of decided this is what I want to do. So I started looking at the requirements I needed for my transfer. Then I started taking those courses, and then I went to Cal State Fullerton, and initially I was going to do animation because I really wanted to get into animation or like making video games or something like that. When it came down to it, I loved detail in my drawings. So for me, illustration was just like a natural path. And I had taken a lot of animation courses too. I have like pretty diverse like education when it comes to art, because I got a lot of traditional background, but my work these days is all digital. Primarily, I should say. I went back to Cal State Fullerton to learn some digital painting techniques and stuff. I had the programs, but I didn't really know how to use them very well. I was really intimidated by it. So yeah, it was like super helpful, and I really never looked back since.
That's actually interesting you're saying about the digital, because aside from someone who's actually painting for a gallery, even if you draw, you still have to scan it onto a computer and make sure that everything transfers. So is there anything really that doesn't have that digital context to it almost?
I mean, illustration, very digital, animation, very digital, and graphic design, but Once you start to get into more like typography, that can be digital. But what I do with Trader Joe's, for instance, my other job, all of that stuff's done with chalk, markers, paint. And it's the same with like sculpture. You can't, I mean, I guess you can get a 3D printer, but I don't even know how that works. So I don't sure if that's really a fair comparison in sculpture. I don't know what that is actually.
Yeah, I don't even know how that would translate to do it. I'm sure someone will figure it out.
Yeah, well, for instance, we have these art forms. It's not a term I like to use, but they kind of call them like a dead art form. And like printmaking really is like an airbrushing, like that stuff. They don't really teach that anymore, or even in calligraphy or lettering, like the typical by hand stuff anymore. That's like cool stuff. So it just kind of depends on what the authenticity you're looking for in the art.
Right, which... Now, you mentioned the Trader Joe's thing. That's like a very unique situation. So you're the guy who's writing all the prices out and all the products out on the chalkboards.
I love working there, but my job is hard to explain, and it is so bizarre. It doesn't logically make a whole lot of sense just because it's so old school, but they really love it. I started with them about 15 years ago, and I was working in like the financial sector, kind of like while I was going through college, like part-time, just doing like different financial stuff anyways, but unrelated to art. Then I told myself, after I graduated, I just wanted to do something that had something to do with my degree. I didn't care what it was, as long as it was art. And I was kind of in between jobs because there was like a downsizing at the financial place I was working at. So I got let go, and it was a great opportunity for me to try to find something. It just kind of worked out for me. It's like a natural progression. And I knew Trader Joe's had sign artists, and I had seen them, and I had shopped there, and I kind of liked the place, I liked the vibe. And I applied at a store that was really far away from where I lived, because I was just trying to get in. And yeah, it's been great. It's fantastic.
Wow. So every store has their own sign artist?
Yeah, it's really cool. Most of them, I know there's some stores that don't, but it's very few. It's typically because they have a problem filling the position.
Right.
Depending on the captain who would be the head manager at the store. This company, I'm telling you, there's people I work with who have been with the company for like 25 years. And I'm like 15 years. I thought that was a long time.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, so they really know what they're looking for. And yeah, it's cool. I've worked with so many people that have worked their way up through the company too, so it's cool to see how it's kind of evolved. And yeah, each store has a different artist, and some of them are incredibly talented. They do really beautiful work. I know it's appreciated, but I don't think some of them get as much acknowledgement. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, because some people, like, you kind of just scan it to see what prices or products are. Not a lot of people, unless you really think to appreciate the artwork, will stand to look at the artwork. So I was like, why are you staring at the sign?
Well, I mean, and let's be honest, when you're in a Trader Joe's, it's kind of hard to focus on anything. There's so much going on in the store, the decorations and the whole ambience, I guess you could say.
Yeah, well, do they give you a basic either format or style or something that they want you to be drawing, or you kind of have fit it on the sign and figure it out?
I have talked to other artists in different areas of the U.S., Like when I travel, I always love to visit other stores. It sounds super nerdy, but it's so Trader Joe's too. Like, it's a very Trader Joe's thing to do. Like, if you work for the company, I went into the store when I was on vacation. And so anyways, I always talk to the other artists, and sometimes they'll be like, oh, I have to write this like this, and they'll have a template of letters that the regional manager has told them they want it to look like this, because I've gotten this before too, where you can get a little too fancy on those hand signs, and you know, as the grandma can't read that, you know, it's beautiful, but you have to think it has to be like clear, concise, get the point across.
Right.
So I've kind of, at this point, I'm really like, I do my own thing, but I do know other sign artists who kind of have to follow a format.
Right. Are you there every day doing signs?
Yeah, we have someone scheduled every day, not all day long, but at least part of the day, because all of those signs that are on the shelf are all made by hand. So
right.
They disappear, and they get gross from like,
Right.
if
Oh,
you ever
yeah.
walk through our meat case, like those
Right.
signs are always like the bane of my existence. I'm like shaking a fist at them. They get all gross and I have to remake them. Yeah, it's a lot of work. And sometimes, especially during the holidays or when our wonderful seasonal pumpkin items come in and the
Yeah.
customers lose their minds over them, as they should, it's like I'm drowning in product that needs to be
Okay.
labeled. So it can be kind of crazy too at the same time.
It's so interesting because probably almost
I know,
everyone
it's
has
wild.
walked into Trader Joe's at some point, and I never thought beyond the sign. Like, it's just there.
Mhm.
And there's a person behind it. There's a person who made it.
Yeah, there's someone in the back. I joke with a friend of mine who I've known for a long time who does this also, and I'm just like, oh, we're like little working Santa's elves in the back
Yeah.
there. No one ever sees us. We make all the toys. We put them out on the sales floor, but no one knows we really exist.
I hate to confirm that, but
Crazy.
it's true.
Yeah. I mean, we do all the decorating, though, too, a lot of the time. As a captain once told me, we're the soul of the store. I don't know. That seems a little reaching, but I get what he meant.
He just wanted to assure you that it wasn't totally unnoticed, I guess.
He wanted me to do a good job.
Yeah. Have you found that between the different art forms that you do, either lettering or illustration or painting or things like that, whether or not you could include sculpture in that, do you see that there's certain maybe rules or ideas or something that apply across all kind of formats, or that apply, like if you know this rule or you know this trick, I can apply it to almost any art form? Have you ever noticed anything like that or thought about something like that?
Yes, and this probably holds true for anything. Having a plan is the best thing to do. Having a loose concept is awesome, but it's not something you can work with. And, like you start working on something, say like a sketch or, in your case, brainstorming or something for writing, to just be like, I'm going to do this right now and not have just everything nailed down, layout, style, just color if there's going to be color, all of that, kind of having all of that or knowing that or having like this, I like to call them like visions, because sometimes it's just, I don't know, I see in my mind what it is I want to do. So like having that all nailed down is like the best approach. There's just been so many times where I've started something and changed over and over and over again that at this point, like I won't even touch a project until I am absolutely certainly sure what I'm going to do with it. It's just a waste of time.
Right. Just because it's clear in your head doesn't mean you could translate it through your hands just yet. Yeah.
Not always. For instance, I have a show coming up like at the beginning of June. And so I didn't know what I was going to do with it though. And then I talked to a coworker of mine. I kind of sat on it for about a week. And then I came up with a way better idea. I got it all put together in like, for me, record time, because sometimes I can be as slow as a snail. I can be very meticulous, I guess. That's just like me. But it all came together. So it just, sometimes it helps to really just step back and not do anything with an idea or concept except for, write it down and maybe have like a few images or whatever it is that you need for it to reference. Just that loose concept.
Well, actually, only because now that you mentioned the show, is that something that many either artists are sort of expected to do, to kind of stage shows every once in a while, to another way to just make sure that you're staying visible? Or?
It's more like exposure, because it's like, oh gosh, how do I explain this? It's like doing work on, I think the term is contingency. Like you get paid after.
Contingency work?
Yeah, because you technically, for a gallery, a lot of times, unless they're going to buy it from you and permanently keep whatever you make, it's on loan and you're not getting paid until someone purchases it from the gallery.
So sort of like a commission-based, sales-based.
Yes, it's all commission-based for a lot of the galleries, at least the ones I work with, and that's fine, but this is, little tip here. This is why I work digitally. Because I can submit them an image or have a print made off of it,
right,
and I still own that digital image. So I typically sit and will not sell that image until a decent, like 6 months or so, or longer sometimes, just because I don't want to undermine my own sales with the gallery.
Yeah.
But I have the ability to reproduce that, and at very little effort and very low cost for me. So work I do digitally, I can get my time or like my money's worth, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Now that you mentioned this whole thing, I'm wondering, because for a writer, if you get someone that says like, okay, we're going to print your novel, but they're still printing thousands of copies of it, right? Or you might have a short story that they'll get first rights to it or like first American rights to whatever, so they could print it for a year, but they could print it multiple times within that year. So with an art gallery, they can't say, oh, you can only sell one version of this image, or like, are there any sort of rules like that for that?
Typically, I will provide them with, like I had one show, I'll use this as an example. I had one show in March. It was a Nintendo, like the original Nintendo entertainment system. It was based on that. And so they wanted movie-style posters for those games that came out in the early 80s. So they said they usually sell multiple prints. So they want a minimum of, I think it was 35. And so I provided them with 35. And then other times it's kind of up to me. And if I'm doing an illustration that's a print base, I'll give them, depending on how I feel about the image, like if I think it's going to sell well or not, or depending on the popularity of it, anywhere from like 5 to 10. It just really depends. And they have the right to sell all of those. And only a few times have I ever been given the work back, but it's usually because it's a licensing issue. Because their license to sell it has expired.
Oh, so when they take an image for a gallery, you're kind of giving them a license to sell it for X amount of time. And however many prints they can sell. Ah, okay.
Yeah, so whatever they have, whatever inventory they have is totally theirs to sell, unless they want to return it. And like the licensing thing, I did a show, for instance, for Monty Python, the original group. Yeah. And I had to provide like 12 prints, I think one print for each member of the troupe, on top of whatever I was submitting for the show. And those images had to be approved by them before we could even start making them. And then once, I think it was a year, the gallery had to sell them, and whatever they didn't sell, they had to return. And we had to put like a disclaimer at the bottom of the image saying that it was their license.
Huh. It sounds like for these galleries, they kind of give you a theme, and then you could just brainstorm any idea from that theme.
Yeah, it's Gallery 1988. So they do like a lot of culture stuff. So they have like a couple different shows that they do every year. So it's like an every year thing. So they have like one called Crazy for Cult they do every year. And it's basically any cult movie that has like cult following. So it'd be like Rocky Horror.
Right.
Or like Labyrinth or the Dark Crystal or something like that. And sometimes they'll be like, please no Goonies artwork this year. Like we have too much, you know? But that's kind of a free-for-all. But they will have other ones that are like very thematic. I did a Mallrats, specifically a Kevin Smith Mallrats show last year.
It's like so random.
Yeah, I know. It was like 25th anniversary of Mallrats. And I was like, what am I going to do for this? And I ended up making an old maid deck with the characters from the movie on it.
Ah, very good.
It's actually playable. So it's a playable deck of cards from the movie. And it has like a set of rules and everything. That was a lot of fun to make.
When you are looking for inspiration, do you just kind of walk around outside and hope lightning's going to strike? Or do you have your methods that you have your playlist, or you're like, okay, this could be anything. How do I figure it out?
Okay, so for me, I do 2 to 3 different things. I will either watch TV, or if it's based on a movie or a TV show, I watch that.
Right, okay.
And I try to absorb every little nuanced thing about it. If there's anything about it, I can kind of latch onto or use as a symbol or something in like an illustration I'm doing, I will take photos. That's the other thing I do. I do a lot of photo reference when I'm watching, say, Mallrats, for instance, for that particular piece. I took a lot of photo reference and was like, okay, and then kind of settled on a theme at that point. Other times, music. I listen to a lot of ambient music, not usually things with too much lyrics, just so I can kind of zone out, so I'm not really concentrating on the music, so to speak. And that helps sometimes too, because then I'm kind of enter like what they call a flow state a little bit, just kind of experiment a little with whatever you're working on,
Yeah. They tell writers to go for a walk or go wash the dishes or do something that doesn't, that keeps the body moving but keeps the brain quiet, to like just open up space for ideas to come in. So it sounds a little bit like that.
Yeah, a lot of times driving for some reason, I have no idea. That I hate when I'm in the car, because I'm usually going somewhere and I'm like, great, really? And if I want to, I can't really draw anything, but I can write something down on my phone. That's not suggestible while you're driving. You know what I mean?
That's so
that
true.
Can be very frustrating.
Yeah. The worst time. Right before you're about to fall asleep, when you're somewhere where you can't be driving. Yeah. So true. This is the life we lead.
I know. It's, the tortured artist.
It actually sounds like with this gallery that you work with, I guess just this one specifically, it almost sounds like you're doing fan art, but for like a gallery setting.
Yeah, and that's actually great for me, just because it helps me with my portfolio. And I do a lot of conventions as well when that was happening. And so I would go and sell my, artwork in the Artist Alley, and a lot of people, if they're fans of the most unique or fringe item or fringe franchise, I may have something based on that because of what I've done for this gallery.
Yeah.
I mean, that's helpful too. There's a lot of people who are obsessed with, like, I don't know, the movie Heathers, for instance. I did like a whole bunch of lettering quotes for that movie, and those are pretty popular when I do conventions because people laugh and they're like, oh, I remember that movie.
Yeah, that's funny.
Stuff like that.
Yeah. Because for writers, it's such a big deal, like agents, for all these things that you've done so far, are most of these things that you've independently applied for, or do you actually need some sort of agent to get into any one of these things that you do?
No, I have not been able to procure an agent,
yet.
Unfortunately.
Yet.
So if you're listening, email me.
Yeah.
It's all stuff I've done. Networking has been very helpful. Facebook, Instagram. I should say this. I did spend quite a period of inactivity between when I graduated college and I don't know when, but there was a period of inactivity because I just didn't know what to do. I networked with some people on Facebook who happened to be other Trader Joe's sign artists, and we started doing like illustration stuff and kind of formed like a community, kind of like the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. And it was like a group of like 2 or 3 other people, and we would just get together and do stuff, and that helped a lot. And one of these people, my friend Kimber, did conventions and gallery shows, and she got me into, hey, you should submit for these shows or for these galleries. And I said, okay. It's your friends, believe it or not, who really encourage you to do things. When you're an artist, you need a good support group for sure. You're like always your worst critic. But yeah, I did it all on my own, just submitting my artwork and applying for like the conventions and stuff, which are really hard to get into sometimes. So yeah.
Well, I guess that also keeps you always have to be doing something, and it doesn't let you stay inactive for any amount of time also doing that.
Yeah, no, it's been great. I think my biggest complaint these days is my head is swimming with so many ideas and things that I want to do, and it's just like trying to organize that and get some of it out of there, you know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. This is sort of what you were saying. Because it seems like even though you had your group on Facebook, I've seen a lot of illustrators on Instagram. It seems like that's been a good space. Because then you just post an image. I don't know. Have you seen that? Yeah.
I would say in the last month, I've been really Instagram because they say it's more about frequency than really about content. And I have a ton of content sitting in my phone, pictures of chalkboards I did like 5 years ago. I've never shown anybody.
Right.
So I'm like, I don't care what it is. If it's old, if it's new, whatever, just start posting it. And yeah, it helps. It gets people to see your work, and people get to see what you can do and what you're willing to do as well.
Yeah, exactly.
It's been really helpful. I think it's really definitely a platform really geared towards visual arts. And that's why I think it works so well. But it is like screaming into a void sometimes too, because it's just immense.
Yeah, because as soon as one person, hey, this works, all the 40 million other people go there, basically.
It is a crazy, crazy world. I try to post and get out because I don't want to get too sucked into it, but...
Yeah, for sure. And only because now that you mentioned the SCBWI, the Society of Children's Books Writers and Illustrators. So,
yay!
Yeah. Are you a new member there, or is that something you've been part of for a while and just...
Yes and no. I joined, I think it was right out of college. And then I don't know what... I was such a poor lost little college grad. I didn't do anything with it. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it was just there.
Yeah.
I was like, hey, this is a good idea. I should join. I did. I never looked at any of the resources. Nothing. You
Right.
know?
Right.
And then couldn't figure out why nothing was happening. So I rejoined just recently, and I was kind of like, oh, as I was joining, I was like, oh, this all makes sense now. For an idiot for never exploring
Yeah.
the website. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, oh, God. I got involved. I had a coworker who mentioned it to me, and she was like, why don't you do this? And I'm like, oh, gosh, I never really thought about that. Like, why didn't I just look into that? Like, it's sometimes it's the obvious that's in front of you. So, anyways, but yeah, so I rejoined and reached out to Cynthia Delatorre. She's our illustration advisor for the area I live in Orange County.
Yeah.
Reached out to her, and she had an illustrators meetup group that meets once a month. So we've been doing that. And that's kind of how I got in touch with you.
Yeah, that's true. Because I was stalking the social media.
I'm glad you liked that illustration too. Those are like that style that I was doing with that one in particular. That's something I kind of did for myself just for fun because I love bad jokes or like puns and stuff. So I wanted to illustrate them as best as I possibly could.
Yeah, we have to say what the illustration is. It was an illustration prompt that they did of, I think it was like a Valentine's Day, like first crush, and you have a slice of bread with peanut butter on it and a slice of bread with jelly on it, and their hands raised running to each other like hands over mouth. It's adorable.
Yes, I know, because I was thinking like, how do I draw this? And I'm like, okay, I just remember a while back somebody had written on a card, I miss you like peanut butter, just jelly. I was like, what if like I had these two slices of bread and they were like, I miss you, and like one's running towards the other one and one's like all, not to steal your phrase, but clutching her pearls, kind of like gasping at the, oh, you're here.
It was so clever. It was just, everything that was submitted for that was great and it's adorable. But then this was like clever also. So that's why it also stood out. I was like, oh, good one.
Yeah. If it gives me a laugh, it gets a green light whenever I'm doing those types of illustrations.
Ah, very good. So,
yeah, I have, I don't know, I think I have like 10 or 15 different ones that are like that, but...
Oh, I gotta wait patiently now. We're gonna have to stalk you on social media until you release those to the world.
They're on I have an Etsy store, they're on there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you can see them there. And I'm sure if you went through my profile, they're probably on there somewhere.
Oh, okay, I'm excited. I have my next activity after this.
Nice.
Just to ask one more question quickly and then we'll wrap up. Have you ever thought about illustrating for children before or doing children's illustration? Or was this sort of, hey, let's see what else we can do in the art world? We always got to hustle sort of thing.
Yeah, I did actually. And the first time I joined, I just didn't know what, and it kind of got away from me. But I did an internship at Nickelodeon at one point.
Oh.
While I was there, I kind of got into drawing kids for like a fairy tale type animated series that I was kind of like playing around with maybe pitching there because I was interning there. It was like an opportunity. I never did because I just didn't have everything lined up and, doubt is every artist's worst trait. So, but anyways, yeah, I did. So I had like all these characters. I did watercolors with some of them and stuff. And they're still kicking around somewhere. But I mean, at this point, that's kind of like past that. But yeah, I was just kind of looking at this point in my life to transition into something a little more geared towards what I like to do. You know what I mean? I enjoy lettering, don't get me wrong. And I love working for Trader Joe's. But at the same time, like, I really like drawing. So I'd rather do that more.
Yeah. For a writer, people could spend months and months on a single story. And then sometimes you're like, no, let go, try to build your library a bit. But that takes months and months and months. But for an illustrator, you're just trying to build a portfolio. Just throw out a bunch of images out there. Or is there any sort of direction on that?
Oh, yeah. And that's the exhausting part about being an illustrator. It's like you have to pair your portfolio to the job. And it can be really exhausting because not only are you not sure exactly what someone might be looking for, but say you apply to, I don't know, Cartoon Network or something, you know? Or like Dr. Seuss, there's a certain style of illustration, so that's pretty clear. But if they're just looking for someone, and they don't say, we're looking for someone who is like this, then that gives you a better idea. But I really don't like that, to be honest with you.
Yeah, because it's too open almost.
It's open, confusing. I've been told, like, before that this is the best part, like getting the feedback when someone looks at your portfolio. This is too broad. And you're like, well, if you're looking for everything or you're not really sure what you're looking for,
right.
and then you're telling me it's too broad,
right.
you're like, I don't know what to do with that information.
Yeah.
But yeah, like having a portfolio for specific jobs. I'm sure it's the same for writing.
Yeah, well, I've gotten before that someone wanted someone to write business correspondence. And I'm like, oh, I'm a writer. I could do that. They're like, no. We need someone who can write business letters. And I'm like, yeah, I'm a writer. Just because I write novels and stories doesn't mean I can't also write other things. That's the point of being a writer. I could do different formats.
It's pretty much the same process. A little bit, kind of.
Yeah.
Well, it's the same thing with illustrating, I would say, kind of.
Yeah. Well, because it's like, if I know how to use words, I can use words for tone. And isn't that sort of what it is, right? You know?
Yeah.
It was just like a funny moment of like, no, I need like a writer. I'm like, that's what I do. I can work in other formats. I can do that. Okay, one more thing and then we will wrap up. There's just so much to talk about. Do you ever get when someone asks you what you do you say, oh, I do, like I work for Trader Joe's, or do you say I'm an artist? Then you kind of get a look of like, oh, you're one of those. Do you have a real job? Do you ever get that stuff? Or you just say Trader Joe's and that way people accept it and they walk away and it's fine?
Oh, gosh, the discrimination. Yeah, no, it's rampant. It's a very head tilted to the side type of thing. Like, oh, that must be so nice that you get to draw all day. It's like if you've ever seen those memes. There's one for art, and it's like what people think I do, what I actually do. And it's like what they think I do. It's like a 5-year-old on the ground with crayons everywhere, you know? It's like, no, it doesn't work that way. But then you get that compliment. Oh my gosh, you're so good. I could never do that. It's like, well, that's because this is my profession.
That's so true also. Like, until you try to do it yourself, you realize why there's professionals. Because they study it, they spend time on it, they work it,
I mean, I would never detract anyone from doing art, but at the same time, expect that it takes effort. You know what I mean?
Absolutely,
And skill and practice, that's it. So I've gotten that, and I laugh about it, because I'm just like, oh gosh, you're either kind of ignorant, and that's okay, because you don't understand it, like there's nothing wrong with that, or you're jealous. That's your problem. If you're pining over what I do, then learn. That's what I did.
But it is a trade-off. If you got a steady paycheck, you got to trade off for the constant hustle, I guess. So
and let me add this too. A lot of people don't understand that when you're in a art program, even though I'm like way backtracking at this point, sorry. I just want to get this up out. So for every 3 units of art classes, that's 2 hours you're at school. So if you have a 3-unit art class, you have a 6-hour of class that you have to be at. As an art major, you're doing double the hours for the credits of, say, like someone who takes a math course.
Oh, wow.
And so that's the other thing, like, people don't get. It's so time-consuming, like, especially in the education field.
Right. And the payoff is sometimes only in satisfaction and not in dollars. That's the other parentheses. That's the fine print I'm just going to add in there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it's good. It's good stuff. So not because I want to, but just to wrap up, we always got the fill in the blank of I love it when writers, illustrators, books, editors, whatever do X, and I really don't like it when they do X. Mm-hmm. So either off the cuff or soapbox answer, or how would you fill in the blank for those?
For the first part of that, it bothers me kind of when somebody hits me up for replicating something. It makes me uncomfortable because I feel like when you show me someone else's artwork that you want replicated, unless that person is no longer with us, you can ask them to do that. So I feel like I'm taking work away from them, but it's also like it kind of starts to get along the copyright thing.
Yeah.
It's just really like a really delicate situation. So it's like if you were to contact me and you want me to do something for you, then I would prefer you look at my work and be like, I like this. Can you make me more stuff that looks like that?
Right.
To answer your other question is, I really admire when the style of artwork matches the writing. A lot of times that author illustrators like Shel Silverstein or like C.S. Lewis, Beatrix Potter, like I admire those people because personally I don't think I can write. So like I think that's really cool when you can do both, and it really kind of it's just married very well because you're the creator, you know?
Yeah.
I think that's just amazing.
Very good.
Thank you.
Well, Michael, thank you so much for coming on and speaking with us. And it was so interesting to hear about the Illustrator world, which is so close and yet it seems so far. Because I can't draw a straight line with a ruler. So I'm like, how do they live? How do they operate?
Yeah. Well, I have no business writing, so...
Well, very good. Well, thank you again. Thank you so much. And it's been a real treat to speak with you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm honored. Thank you so much.
This was a bonus episode of Oh My Word podcast featuring artist and illustrator Michael Stiles. To find out more about Michael and to check out some of his fantastic work, please check out the link in the episode notes. To find out more about Oh My Word podcast, follow us on Instagram at Oh My Word podcast, or check us out at eltenenbaum.com. Thanks so much for joining us. Catch you next time.